Welcome to Riding the Trauma Train, or welcome back if we've shared this space before. I'm Lydia, your host and fellow passenger in this journey of self-healing, inner strength and personal growth. This podcast is a safe, judgment-free space dedicated to the realities of living with and healing from trauma. Through personal stories and in-depth conversations with special guests, including therapists, healers, practitioners, and fellow survivors, we look at what healing can truly look like in everyday life. We explore realistic healing journeys and share simple, sustainable practices and actionable tools to support your well-being along the way. So grab your ticket, take a seat, and remember you are not on this journey alone. Today, we are joined by Josh Connolly. I almost get that mixed up in my tongue. It's like a tongue twister for me. Anyway, Josh's story is one of resilience, transformation, and hope. Having experienced significant childhood trauma and later his own battle with alcohol addiction, he has spent the last 14 years rebuilding his life and helping others do the same. Today, Josh is a best-selling author, breathwork facilitator, keynote speaker and host of the Dysfunctional Podcast, known for his honest, no nonsense, another tongue twister, approach to emotional well-being. Josh is out there doing what he does best. So grab your ticket, take a seat, and remember you are not on this journey alone. Josh, welcome to Riding the Trauma Train.
Thank you. Good to be here, and appreciate the introduction. It's always just always funny, like hearing people talk about you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, oh, yeah, I did that.
Yeah, yeah, it's like that. Yeah.
So I just said just a minute ago, just before we started, that I have been following you for a number of years, and I used to look at all your little whiteboard stuff and your no BS approach. But I love the fact that you take whatever it is that you are speaking about and you just make it so that everybody can understand it. There's no kind of really, really long words. It's just simple. And for somebody like me, that I'm not a scientist, I don't know the big scientific words, it really resonates.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. And I'm sure all my other listeners would probably be thinking the same. My first question to you is, well, you've been on a massive, massive journey. And for those that don't know who you are, obviously we've connected a little over the last few weeks because of the breath work. Can you tell people who is Josh and give us your story?
Yeah, I'll try and give you like a brief overview, I guess. And firstly, to the point about the simplifying stuff and simple, straight talking, that's been a journey to get there as well, because but what I realized through my own experiences is that the real truth just delivered in a clear tone that makes sense has been so important for my journey, as somebody who throughout my whole life had people sort of dubbing my experience down or using terms to try and make me feel better about stuff, when all I needed was the truth. All I wanted was the truth, and I wanted to hear it in a way that felt supportive. But as you mentioned in the intro, I got sober in 2012 after my own struggles with alcohol and drugs, actually, in my case. And it was on that journey, really, of trying to discover myself, trying to find out why I ended up the way that I did, that I realized that I had a really difficult childhood. Because when I quit drinking, by the way, it's really important for me to say, I would have said that I had a perfect life, perfect childhood. My drinking can't be to do with trauma because I don't have any. And then and not to brush over it, but then I went on to discover that my dad was an alcoholic, right? And I say discover, I always knew that, but then discover what that really meant and discover how I really felt about it. And he died when I was 9. And then my mum remarried and we lived a much more functional life after that, but never ever spoke about the first 8 or 9 years ever again. And I feel like that was the major struggle, really, where a lot of the major struggle and the confusion come from. And I think that it's made me always question everything, because I was repeatedly lied to as a kid, really. a lot of the lies, when I say I was lied to as a child, a lot of the lies were from good people thinking they were doing the right thing, but it just was so confusing. And so I think we see that a lot, particularly in social media age, of people like saying stuff that sounds nice and makes you feel good. But then when you go away and try and process it or implement it or explore it more, it makes you feel terrible because it doesn't add up. And so like, I do really believe in truth and giving people the truth and then supporting them through whatever experience they have as a result of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I can relate to that in not in the alcohol sense, but being in an environment where you don't realize the environment is actually bad for you. Like from my experience, it was a very, very violent household. There were knives and guns and all these things, but that to me was just normal. The same, I suppose, as being with your dad and him just drinking. Like that's just part and parcel of what he did. When you said then that it was later on that you discovered that it was the trauma. What do you think led to your own alcohol and drug misuse?
I think like, I would always say that I never try to water it down to one single thing, right? So like when people say, is it nature or nurture? I'm just like, well, it's so obviously both,
Yeah.
right? Like one activates the other, which activates the first one, right? Like it's like a cocktail of stuff. I do believe that I am naturally, and by naturally, I think I was born with a higher level of sensitivity, right? When I look at like my two brothers, particularly like my older brother, for example, he doesn't have the level of sensitivity as me, right? And so I would argue that that's genetic. Now, I would also argue that the level of sensitivity that I've got based on my experience has probably been like, I was going to say worsened, but you could also argue that like it's got better, like it's got deeper. My sensitivity's got deeper. But that sensitivity in and of itself is not like a sentence to becoming an alcoholic or an addict. And so like, I do think that I am somebody who was born very vulnerable to that, to being that sense, like being very in tune with other people is, both a gift and a curse. And then as a result of the experiences that I went on to have, like that was activated and I became that. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
like, I think that I don't think I was born destined to be an alcoholic or an addict, but I think I was born high risk to it and then had the experiences that one would need in order to become it.
Okay. So when obviously I know that from listening to your podcast that the early days when your parents split up, something that really resonated me was the fact that you said your mum would used to say things to you to validate her own feelings. So, like, if they'd had an argument or if something had also like the day that you found your father, like, you would kind of not dumb it down, that's a really silly way to say it, but your mum would say things like, "You're okay, aren't you? You're okay, aren't you?" And to validate her own feelings. I think for so many people, that is still true, even if they've not been through the level of trauma that you've been through. What would you say to those parents, I suppose, not the kids, the parents that are not validating that child's feelings?
Yeah. So to the parents, I think firstly, I would say that I'll be speaking to myself, right? So like, even as somebody that talks about this all the time, right? I still know that my default when one of my children is in any kind of pain, right? If one of my young kids has fallen over but if they're in an emotional pain, my automatic reaction is to make everybody feel better. But it's driven by me. I want to feel better, right? I think it's really important to understand that is that we say like, oh, I just want everyone to be okay. That's not what drives it, and like, if my child comes to me and tells me something that's, I remember once I've talked about this a lot. One of my kids come to me and said, I feel like everyone in the house would be better off if I wasn't here. When I say, oh, you don't have to think like that. We all love you. You're amazing. That's not about them. I'm saying that because it's made me feel awful. When I told you it made your body go, you could see, right? It makes you
Yeah,
go, oh, that's
you
terrible.
recoiled straight
You
away.
recoil. So then when I start chucking all this positivity out, that's all about me. That's me trying to make it more manageable for me. Right. And so what we have to do is, as much as we can, be able to go and meet them. Say like, well, this is this sounds a lot. Like, tell me some more about that. Even when you tell me, like, let them know when you tell me, I can feel that in my body. Like, it's hard for me to hear. Let's explore it. Where do you think it's coming from? So the more that we can do that, the better. But what I would say is that you need to be able to revisit, because you will always do the first thing that I said. Not always, but a lot of the time. And I still do. And I have to go back to my kids and say, listen, you came to me yesterday with something and I just told you to get on with it and everything could be fine. The reason I did that is because I wasn't emotionally available or in the right space yesterday. I didn't have the capacity. I'd like to revisit it. Now, mostly kids don't want to revisit it because the world hasn't got hold of them yet and they still live in the moment. And they're like, it was yesterday. I don't want to talk about it. But the fact that you are creating that space is teaching them, well, one, it's teaching them the art of repair and that it's okay to make mistakes and we are all flawed individuals. But you're also teaching them that, you know, when I try and wrap everything up in a positive light straight away, that's about me, not you. Yeah.
I get that. Would you say then would be the same on the flip side of that if the child has got some kind of anger or rage or frustration and the parent comes in and they match that rather than bringing the child down? You know, typical example, trying to get the kids to school. Everybody's gone back to from half term this today. Um, and the house is in disarray. Everyone's rushing. Child's not doing what they're doing. Parent gets that whole level of frustration. So the Taurus box is going up and up and up. Would you say the same kind of thing to the parent at that point, with it to bring it back down, or how would you approach that?
I think that any parent that deals with the school run in the morning every day without raising their voice and getting angry about it, any parent that does that and never gets angry about it, I would worry that they are suppressing and they've got a problem. Like, genuinely, that's what I think,
Yeah,
right? Because I think that, like, as much similar with the healing stuff, yeah. If you're not careful, you start every time, like, we all have good and bad moods, right? Sometimes you're just in a bad mood. That's part of the human condition. And I think if you sit down and try and unpack every time you're in a bad mood, your life will be miserable
yeah,
because you're going to be doing it all the time. And so, like, I think we have to also be careful that, like, what's the context? Did you wake up feeling a bit tired and groggy and the kids pushed you to the limit and you got upset, raised your voice at them? You might want to when you pick them up later, but say, sorry about this morning. You know what it's like. And they're fine, you know? That's a whole different context to, is the outbursts coming because you've just separated from their mum or their dad and everybody's emotionally suppressing and you keep outbursting on the school run because you can't deal with what's going on? That's completely different to, it was Wednesday. They keep going on about that thing that they keep going on about. And that's part of parenthood. And so, like, I think that it's knowing the difference between the two and making sure that we don't sort of like almost like over sort of therapize, for want of a better word,
yeah.
every single moment. If you shouted at your kids on the school run, but you're open with them, they know that they can come to you, you know, I even think that if your kids know that they can get angry in front of you, I think it's a positive thing.
It's
People come
healthy.
people come to me all the time and say, you know, this this happened with, you know, I don't know, there was a separation or they've lost a parent or whatever, and they keep getting really angry at home. I'm like, my opinion is like, good, because I never got angry when I was at home,
Mm,
ever, ever, because I didn't want to burden my mum with what I was experiencing, and I needed to get angry.
yeah. And I think that that's kind of where I was going with that, because um I remember that particular comment on one of your reels. And also, I think the last couple of days I've seen quite a lot of shorts go up about toxic parents,
Mm.
which leads me very well onto your book.
Hmm.
It's Them, Not You. So tell me a bit about that, and where did the idea come from? What we've just been talking about that, but what drove you to write a book about it, and how can that book help other people?
So I think, look, I grew up in dysfunction myself, and then through all of the like work that I've been doing over the last, it's been over a decade now, right? Supporting people affected by originally a parent's drinking, and then realizing that some people you would speak to and they would have parents who they, you know, really loved them and who were good people, but got caught up in addiction and, you know, stuff like that. But then I would speak to some, and I've even, you know, not only supported through the work that I do, but loved people who have grown up with parents where it's different, right?
Mhm.
And we're talking about like really abusive parents, really. And yet there's only ever this blanket information out there, which is your parents did the best that they could. They loved you and all that kind of stuff. And I realized that we need to talk more about this. We need to understand that, like, I have lots of compassion for, you know, for parents. I am one, right? I'm a parent who was in addiction, right? So I'm not here to be like, you shouldn't forgive parents if they mess up, right? I'm here to talk about the fact that there are abusive people in our world, right? And a lot of them are parents, and they're not abusive in the world and nice to their kids, right? They are. And so what do you do if you're a child, an adult child who's got a parent who's wholly abusive, never takes accountability for anything? What do you, like, do you have to find a way to love them and have to find a way to have them in your life? Because it's changing.
Mhm.
And, you know, a lot of the work that I've done, I've seen it change since it's sort of become something that's talked about online a lot more. But most of the information out there is telling people to do that. And like, to get really, really clear about it, if somebody is abusive to you when you're a child, right? And they're abusive to you all the time. And like, when I say all the time, I got to be really clear that some parents, and I know some people find this hard to believe, and I'm so glad that most people do find it hard to believe. Some parents are horrible to their kids all of the time and
Yeah.
are only nice to them to be horrible to them so that they can get what they want, right? That is the unfortunate reality for some people. To then tell that person, but they loved you, that is not love.
No.
That's not love. And we shouldn't be teaching people that that's what love is, because love isn't that. It's not that,
No.
right? Like, love has mistakes. People do bad things, right? But love is about accountability. It's about responsibility. It's about connection. It's about like repair. It's not about what I just described before that. And I think it's so important to say that. And that's why I got like, I say got, I still am very passionate about it. I still get angry when I talk about it because because the work that I do means that I talk about it every day. And if I
Yeah.
ever get to the point where it doesn't make me angry, I'll be concerned.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I also think on that note then is actually if you think about it in parent terms, if you've got somebody that is being so horrible to you every single day, if you were in the workplace and that was a colleague or that was your boss, you wouldn't take it. So why do you have to be in an environment, or as an adult looking back on your child, why do you have you choose your friends, you don't choose your families? I think is the same as, isn't there a term like blood is thicker than water? And then someone said ice is thicker than blood or something like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's really difficult to, I think you did, I think I've obviously seen a lot of your stuff the last few days.
Once you've searched me as a bit of research, then you've put me on your algorithm, I'm afraid. So you have to deal with me coming up.
But I think you pulled out some guy called Danny who was saying, "Why are you estranged from your parents?" Like, yeah, it baffles me. Uh, so the book itself, then, is it like a self-help book, or is it something for people to kind of guide them in some way?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but no, it's a good question as well. It takes people on a journey. It spends a little time at the beginning sort of validating the experience and like doing a little bit of what we just spoke about, right? And then the whole idea of the book is to take you on a journey to be able to like find freedom, really, whatever freedom looks like. And to be clear, freedom doesn't always mean, because it's called It's Them Not You, How to Break Free from Toxic Parents and Reclaim Your Story. That doesn't always mean no contact, right?
Mhm.
But it's like, how do you find freedom? And it's an inner child journey actually within the book. And there's lots of reflective exercises. At the end of every chapter, there's a QR code that you scan and it takes you to do a breath work so that you're doing the somatic stuff with it as well. But it is a journey. It's a journey to that, and a journey to like understanding how you still deserve a shot at freedom You know, you still deserve a shot at your own well-being. And, you know, people do change, you know, people who do lots of bad things do change, but some don't. Some don't. And if any of my children, and some of my children are adults now, if they were in a relationship with somebody who was abusive, my advice to them would not be, well, stick around, they might change. It wouldn't be that.
No.
I would say get out. If they change, they can come back. Get out. If they're being horrible and abusive, get out. Yeah, they might change. We'll let them go away and change, and then they can come back.
Yeah.
You
You
know?
don't need to take the abuse in the same,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And some people don't change. That's the key thing. So what do you want to do? Gamble on your life? And that's the key thing. And look, there are levels of this. There's levels of dysfunction. I think everybody has to make a decision, like with their parents. If their parents have any level of dysfunction, which I would argue every parent has a level of dysfunction, right? But so let's say any level of unmanageable dysfunction.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. You have to look at them and say, you have to see them for exactly as they are, right? And stop trying to build a life where you think, if I just do this, then maybe they'll care. If I just do this, then maybe they'll love me. You have to see them exactly who they are and ask yourself, deep down, them as they are right now, with everything I know about them, see them clearly, as truthfully as you can. What sort of a relationship can I have with them? And then you go from there. The answer might be none. The answer might be, okay, they're never going to be able to emotionally support me because they're emotionally immature and they don't have the capacity. Can I have a relationship with them that's built around everything else? I think that's entirely possible with lots of people. All right. But the key thing is that I don't get to make that decision for you. I don't get to tell you how toxic is too toxic. Because again, we all have traits that one might call toxic, right? That one could definitely call toxic. I'm a parent myself. I have them, you know? And so, yeah, the book just helps people with that really. And to go on that journey of discovery.
I love that. With regards to what you went through, do you think that trauma has played a part in how you now parent? So obviously you've been through the addiction stages of your life. You've been sober for 14 years. How, when you recognize that you had that you did actually go through trauma and your childhood was traumatic, what has that changed in you to from then till now?
Yeah. I think if you look, so my eldest child is 19. And she's nearly 20. She was 6 when I quit drinking. My youngest child is 8. So I was a number of years sober before she was even born. She will not be the same 20-year-old that my 20-year-old is now. She will not. My 2 youngest children, I would like to think, have had good enough parenting. By the way, I don't know if anybody can do any better than that, right? It's good enough parenting. My elder children, the 4 that were born before I stopped drinking, did not have good enough parenting in their formative years. And so they will ultimately have to do some work when they're adults at some stage in their life. They're going to realize that their own pain, struggle, dysfunction was driven by me and the environments that I played a part in creating for them in their initial years. So my goal as a parent is to work on myself enough that when that time comes, they will phone me if they need to. They will be able to think, they will come out of a therapy room or wherever it is they go for that journey, having realized that one of their adult struggles is driven by me, and they will be able to text me or ring me or whatever form of contact it'll be in that time, by the way.
Teleport, yeah.
Yeah, like get their AI bot to message me or whatever, I don't know, but like, and say, look, this has come up and I think I want to talk to you about it. And they'll be able to do that. That's the only hope I can have. And by the way, that will be the same for my 2 youngest as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because people say, there's a couple of sayings that I'll just bring up here because I think it's important. The first one people say is, give your children a childhood they won't need to heal from. I'm like, well, good luck with that. good luck with that. I don't think you will. I think they will need to heal. I don't care how functional your own childhood was, there's going to be a little bit of healing, right? And it might just be that, they need to have a conversation at one point and realize where you let them down or whatever. But there will be some healing. So don't create a childhood that they don't need to heal from. Create a bond with them that when their healing comes, they know that you're a safe person to be on that journey with them. That's what I would say to that. And then the second thing is that people say, be the child that, or be the parent you needed when you were young. I don't think you should do that either. I don't think you should parent your child through the lens of what you needed when you're young, because they ain't you. And what my kid needed what I needed when I was a child, as the child of an alcoholic dad and I saw is not remotely what my kids need. My kids need a present father who's working on himself as much as he can to be there as much as he can. And I'll caveat all of that by saying, I don't do any of it very well. Like, I am not a model parent. I don't, I wouldn't want people to film me parenting and share that. I'm not a model parent. I'm not remotely. And I always say that because I think I can talk well and say good things. And I don't want to give the illusion that I find it easy at all. I'm constantly saying sorry to my kids, basically.
But the thing is, you are saying sorry.
Exactly.
So, like, we can all flip our lid. We can all go through these things. What you've said there is really powerful, and I know that the things that you have had to work on is from your childhood trauma, and you're not skirting around the fact that actually your kids did go through some stuff because of the choices that you made at that time. And for me, my two girls are 8 and 11, and through my healing journey, I see some of the stuff that I kind of take a step back and go, oh my gosh, and I have to apologize because my tolerance level can be like minute, and whether that's just being a parent or whether that is a trauma response coming through, I don't know. Everything isn't pink and fluffy. It's
No.
not all rainbows and unicorns, as much as I'd love it to be. But I think with that comes a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. And those are things that were portrayed on me when I was a child. But I also think that where you've just said that we cannot parent our children through the eyes of what we wanted, because they've never had that same trauma, which means you're masking whatever it was that you went through, and you're portraying that onto them because they've not been through it.
Yeah. You're bringing that energy. You're bringing that energy, right? And you're completing the cycle rather than breaking it, because you're just coming from that. If I parented from what my child needed, I'm bringing all of that energy.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think and another thing that I would say to people is, like, because a lot of people say, everybody should do the work before you have kids. You won't be able to. You won't be you won't be able to, because you'll do all the work in the world, which in an ideal situation, we'd all do the work, right? Do loads of healing work and then have kids, and then you have them, and then boom, your whole world changes. And then the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to feel this love for this kid that you've never experienced ever in your life before in any way. And everything that you experienced when you were a child is going to make even less sense, because you're going to be like, what the and then every time they reach an age where you've told yourself a certain story and it's protected you and it worked. Like, one of the stories I told myself, that was when my dad died when I was 9. I was too young to really understand it, and I wouldn't have been able to fully comprehend it. I had a breakdown when my first child reached 9 years old, because but that original story kept me safe. That would have felt like healing. Like, I was like, yeah, no, I dealt with it and I'm cool. I understand it all. it was young. And that kept me safe, and it worked, and it did what I needed it to do. And the only way to break that illusion was to see a child that I loved in the way that I love my daughter be 9 years old and think, oh my God. And then you have to go and do another whole load of work.
Yeah.
And that's what life does to you. And that's why there ain't no silver bullet. And that's why I'll always call out gurus online that, like, talk platitudes from a place of, like, from a spiritual high top. Because it's just not realistic. It's not real. Because in the last 14 years, I've been on many a spiritual high top and sat there and thought, I've made it and I'm staying here. And then something happens in life, sometimes out of my control. Sometimes I do it. And then I'm like back at the bottom of the
Yeah.
spiritual high top, looking up at the top, thinking, how did I get here again? You
Oh
know?
my God, where's the ladder?
Yeah, exactly.
I can honestly, so I thought I had done all this work in when my husband and I first got married, because being in an intimate relationship, that was quite a trigger for me. And then we didn't have our first child till we'd been married 17 years. And I thought I had done all the work. I thought I was like on this, literally, like you just said, on this high top. And then I had my first child. And then I literally got throat punched with everything that could have come my way. And then 2 years ago, my abuser died. Bam, another throat punch. So that, I think it's true. I think on our we're always on this journey, and there will always be work to be had. I commend you from the fact that you have done the work to help other parents, because that is a big thing. How did you go from, obviously, going from the addiction, working through that, writing a book, podcasting, to keynote speaking? So tell me that journey, because it's quite an unraveling, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, so I found Nakoa, right? So I've been with Nakoa now 11 years. So I was about, I was a little while into, and actually before I found Nakoa for a little while, I started doing some charity work and I was sort of trying to discover myself. And then when I found Nakoa, I started like volunteering with them. And then I did a bit of like speaking on behalf of them. And then it went on the news and stuff like that. And I'll be honest with you, looking back, what happened is I felt seen for the first time in my life, and I got a little bit addicted to sharing my story online,
Mhm.
right? So I did a bit of that for a while,
Can
and
I just
then
interject one
yeah.
second? For those that don't know what NACOA is, can you just explain that
So
quickly?
it's the National Association for Children of Alcoholics. We are predominantly a helpline that anyone affected by a parent's drinking can call and speak to a helpline counsellor. But over the last, NACOA's been around for 37 years.
Wow.
And we do stuff in schools and raise awareness and loads of awareness raising stuff and teaching teachers about stuff. So yeah. And then, I got asked to speak at a few conferences, and then I realized that there might be like a job in it. Like it might be something, because I worked in a factory at the time. I was a transport manager in a factory. I'd worked in there since I was 18 years old. And then, just through like a series of events, I ended up leaving my job in 2018. I started working with corporate companies. So I created a load of I used my experiences of life to create like resilience workshops, and
Mhm.
then I was very, lucky in many ways, I guess, that I started working with like Dyson was one of my very early clients, and I still work with them today, although I haven't done for the last year or two. And that the corporate stuff sort of really took off. And then I was like working with brands all over the world. And within a few years, particularly through COVID, when a lot of brands were looking for well-being stuff. And then alongside that, I was always doing like my community work and building a platform online. So I've just journeyed in the last, what's that been now? That would have been 8 years since I left my job. I journeyed from working in a factory to what I've built now.
Which is brilliant, especially, I say especially, but being from the background that you've come from,
Mm,
and you've now flipped that on its lid, and you're using what happened as a positive for other people that have either been through it or are going through it. So yeah, that's very empowering, Josh. Very
thank you.
empowering.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I spend a bit of time with it, and I look at it and it's good, but I don't know. I don't spend too much time with it. People always
Yeah.
say, I hope you spend time with it. I'm like, I'm an addict. If I spend too much time with it, my ego runs away with me and I start to put myself on a pedestal. So I don't spend too much time with it. I just keep doing what I do. And I love it. I love supporting and helping people. It's my dream.
That brings me on to my next question. So obviously you have said all this stuff about all the work that you've done, the speaking that you're doing. Let's throw in breath work, because you don't seem to be the typical guy that would be into breath work or into kind of spirituality. But breath work's been a really, really big part of your healing, hasn't it?
Yeah. And spirituality, by the way. I mean, I got sober through the 12 steps, right? So I don't know if you know much about the 12 steps, but that's like what they do in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, which is where I went to get sober, right?
Mm-hmm.
The 12 steps are built, they are designed to give you a spiritual awakening. That's the whole point of the 12 steps. And I had one, what I would call a spiritual awakening. That doesn't mean that I like woke up and saw angels. It just meant that I had this clarity in my life and saw things very, very differently. Spirituality has been like the single most important thing in my life. Now, spirituality to me is understanding my truth and understanding how my truth relates to the world and how I relate to other people. That's kind of base level it, right? The
Mm-hmm.
rest of it is like going and discovering like what that means through a Buddhist lens, what that means through a Christian lens, what it means for a Sikh lens, what it means through New Age spirituality lens, right? Like all of those for me are lenses to understand my relationship to myself and the world that I live in. For a long time, I was like bypassing myself. So like I would say stuff that sounded great but didn't mean anything. It's just like a way of not having to feel the ways that I felt. And then I discovered breathwork maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, just through like trying to meditate, and I couldn't meditate. And then like I had a breathwork experience trying to meditate basically through accidentally breathing really deep. And then I had a conversation with a friend and he said, that sounds like a breathwork experience. You should try breathwork. And the moment I tried it, it like changed everything, you know, it like by that stage, I understood everything fully. Like intellectually, I understand everything. You know, being a good speaker is not necessarily about how much knowledge you have, right? There's a level of charisma. I'm very good at talking, right? I know that. I'm aware of that. It's great. It's a gift, but it's one of the things that's also a curse because it means that like I can make everybody around me think that I'm talking deeply about my emotions. And if I talk like this right. But the truth is I'm not feeling it. And so I need to feel them. And talking about them doesn't make me feel them. Talking about them is a way of avoiding feeling them in my book for me. And then so discovering breathwork and being able to do a practice that changed that and gave me a way of letting my emotions out was incredible. And like the problem with breathwork is, and you know this, I can talk about it till the cows come home and you just won't, if you've never done it before, you won't believe me, right?
Mm-hmm.
You won't believe me that you can have a life-changing experience in one session, right? That you can have a mind like mine that never settles and finish a breath work and lay there for an hour with a completely crystal clear, quiet mind, right? People that have lived the life that I have and have the head that I do just won't believe that until they do it. And so I just realized that straight away. I was like, why don't I know about breathwork? And the reason I think I didn't know about it is because most of the people that talk about it don't look like me or sound like me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, how do I bring this to people? And I've faced a lot of backlash from people for how I talk about it. But I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in bringing it to people that really need it. And I believe in talking to people in a language that they understand. And
Mm-hmm.
listen, I've done loads of different stuff. I've been into prisons, right? I've been into prisons, and then I've been in and spoke to CEOs of some of the biggest companies in the world. I don't talk to those two groups of people the same because that would be silly. I
Mm-hmm.
talk to them in the
Yeah.
language that they understand, and so I do the same with the breathwork. Yeah,
Okay. Now I did have obviously I've just started your facilitator course, which I'm very excited about. But I hadn't done a proper breath work until I think it was April. And I don't know if you know a guy called Ted Lawler. He came up to
no,
Wiltshire, but he is very much like you. He just normal guy, talks out how he's like Londony way, so not our kind of accent. But I had this experience of this anger and sadness and all these things that were deep in my gut, and I hadn't cried for a long time, and I sobbed, and I couldn't even help it. It was just this movement coming out of me, and it was at that moment that I was like, I need to see what this is about. So, and then obviously you brought out this thing on the 14th, on the day 14th of May, the day of your
yeah,
sober anniversary, and it was about becoming a facilitator, and I just think the more that people, especially people that have been through trauma, the more that they can understand that these things will help them on their way, the more like the world will be a better place. Because like it's pretty crap in some circumstances.
Yeah.
But if you can get to yourself and you can feel your feelings and you can walk through the world in a peaceful way, then it's got to be worth it. Sorry, went off on a tangent there.
No. But I 100% agree with you. And it's almost like everybody that does breathwork has this same thing. It's just like, it's so simple, right? Really, what you do is really, really simple, right? You know, there's a complexity to creating safety and facilitating and stuff. But in terms of like doing a session yourself, it's so simple, and the impact is so profound. And you know, we talk about all this stuff with parenting and stuff like that. I am a different dad to my children if I'm doing a regular breathwork practice. I shout at them less. I'm more present. Like, I'm more free. Like, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind about that. And of all the things that I've done, and I've done loads, you know, talking therapies, everything over the years, nothing is anywhere near comparable to the impact that doing a breath work in the morning before I go out for the day with the kids. Nothing is comparable in my life.
That's mad. And with people that want to work with you on the breathwork, how can they discover you, or how can they kind of tap into that? What is the way forward?
There's a free breathwork on my website. So if you just go to joshconnolly.co.uk, there is a free breathwork that you can try on there, as I say, completely free. And then we also have Breathing Space, the community. So I've got two communities. We've got like the Facilitator Pathway, which is a community in itself and a pathway to becoming accredited in breathwork. But we've also just got Breathing Space, which is the online community that you can come in, be with us all. We meet every week for a sharing circle. We do jumping straight off of here and straight into delivering a lunchtime breathwork today in Breathing Space for everybody in there. And the library of breathworks from me and other guest facilitators, there's hundreds of them in there, probably over 1,000 now if you add them all together. And yeah, that's £10 a month for full access, and you can get a 14-day free trial. I always say to people, if you want to trial it, you just go in, cancel it straight away. You get your 14 days and you get to get in there and have a look at what it's about. And yeah, we've got an incredible community in there. Yeah.
Is there anything that if somebody said Josh Connolly breathwork or Josh Connolly keynote speaker, how would you want people to think of you or remember you?
Wow, that's a really good question. I want to show people that, like, what it really is to be human, really. Like, how do you be yourself, and how do you get seen and validated in that? I think that this is my experience, a lot of healing work overcomplicates so much. We're always looking to fix ourselves as if we're broken. And so I guess, yeah, I would want people to know that you're not broken. You just need to find out to get your needs met. And I want to show people that, and how to do it in community with other people. I don't know if that was a bit of a jumbled answer, but
No, no,
it's a very good
it
question.
sounds good in my brain. So I'm thinking if it sounds good in mine, it'll be fine on speakers. Um, okay, so everybody that comes on the podcast, I ask something called a conductor's question. If you could, this is going back. So now you're a speaker, and when you were a child, you didn't have a voice, you didn't speak up. If you could sit next to the 9-year-old boy that was about to learn all this pain, all this resilience, what would you say would be waiting for him in adulthood?
That's a good question.
Or
Uh, do I tell him the truth that it's full of pain and you're going to cling on as much as you can? No. What would I say? What would I
knowing what
say?
you know now.
Knowing what I know now, what would I tell? Do you know what I would say? I would actually firstly thank him, really, for what he's going to do to get us through to adulthood, because as horrible as it all was, in a world that wasn't giving him anything, he found a way to survive. And though it didn't look pretty, it did. It helped us survive. And what I would tell him was waiting was an enriched life that comes with its struggles, but is so worth it. So worth it. Yeah.
Okay, right. I think with that conductor's question, I'm going to wrap up. So thank you so much for coming on. to the episode, and I look forward to connecting with you forever, is what I'm going to say.
I like it. Yeah, same. I agree.
Thank you so much for joining me today on Riding the Trauma Train. I'm Lydia, and I feel privileged to share this space with you. No matter where you are on this train right now, whether it's in survival mode, slowly finding your feet in recovery, or maybe it's somewhere in between, remember, you are not alone in what you're feeling, and you do not have to travel this journey by yourself. So if you'd like to continue traveling together, please follow Riding the Trauma Train wherever you're listening, so you can join us at the next stop. Until next time, take care.